Let's start with tomorrow's Mirror. And Extinction Rebellion find themselves in a sticky situation, Nick.
They do once again, yes. Extinction Rebellion protesters superglue themselves inside House of Commons, and a photo which you'll have seen, I'm sure, on Twitter, appears to show three members of the controversial group standing next to the Speaker's chair inside the House of Commons chamber. Some questions as to how they got there. There's going to be a security probe. I've been to the House of Lords. You go through a scanner, you know, like at the airport, but presumably they don't... Presumably the Commons is similar, but obviously they don't scan for glue because they've got in there with a load of glue, glued themselves to stuff. And, you know, Mark, don't you feel that the establishment is a little soft on Extinction Rebellion? And I would suggest it's because they're essentially posh idiots who think the world's going to end due to climate change any minute. And that also describes most politicians.
Well, yes, I have to say I can't disagree with that. Diane Spencer, I'm worried about the optics of the House of Commons chamber being attacked by non-elected protesters. You know,
yeah.
I just think it's, you know, it's not quite the Capitol Hill on January the 6th. But these people have broken into the home of democracy in this country and glued themselves to this iconic chamber.
Well, I believe that they tried to pass as part of a tour, which is the way they got in. And it made me think, well, great, now you've stuffed it for the rest of us. If we wanted to go for a tour, we're going to have to hand in sort of our CV. They're going to do background checks now. I mean, it's bad enough when somebody rifles through your handbag. But, yes, yeah, the optics don't look great. But on one hand, I do think to myself, well, at least they are now causing disruption for the people that actually can... The people that they want to make the changes. Whereas usually they glue themselves and cause disruption for everybody else, and we can't make any changes.
People trying to get to work, people trying to get their kids to school, an ambulance trying to take someone that's having a stroke to hospital.
Yeah, actually really important things.
But I totally agree with you, but don't you think that, just in terms of how this looks, it's a virtual and literal attack on democracy?
It is a virtual and literal attack on democracy, and what's interesting is that it's part of their five-stage plan, which is outlined in this article, if anybody's interested. Extinction Rebellion clearly want to replace the democracy we have with a brand new democracy, the People's Alliance and the People's Committee, and they're going to make this five-stage plan where they're hoping to recruit 100,000 people by spring 2023. They've got their targets, and in between then they're going to absolutely disrupt things for the rest of us in Marble Arch and the rest of it.
Yeah, well, my concern, Nick, is just about the fact that if we yield to these thugs, then you set the precedent that another cause will come along. I mean, for example, should people glue themselves to the House of Commons chamber to tackle child poverty? Maybe that's a good idea. Or food banks, or the cost of living crisis. I mean, there's no cause that's not worthy of protest.
And not worthy of glue, yeah, there are so many. You're right, I like Dan's idea that at least they're gluing themselves to the right targets this time. But yeah, you're right, it is a security issue, there's a precedent. And you notice the treatment was much tougher of lockdown sceptics when they went on protest. So there does seem to be a bit of a two-tiered approach, don't you think?
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen to these people yet, but it seems to me they're a bit tougher on protests they don't like.
Briefly, Nick Dixon.
Hello.
Your favourite glue, YouView. Do you go for Pritt Stick?
I have to go with Pritt Stick for the nostalgia quality.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, it depends what we're doing with the glue.
We're not for gluing myself to the House of Commons.
What about your classic Bostik super glue?
Yeah, look, I like Pritt Stick because it's what I grew up with, but I wouldn't, if gluing myself to part of the House of Commons, I wouldn't trust it. It's not that sticky, is it?
Isn't it glue really bad for the environment? I mean, don't you have to use a solvent to get rid of the... Isn't this all toxic chemicals that they're using? I mean, couldn't they use, like, handcuffs made from sustainable bamboo?
Maybe we leave these characters glued to the House of Commons, let them run the country for a couple of years and see what happens.